Nice to see you, Ian.
You
You're
too.
looking very tanned and windswept, by the way, I should say.
Hopefully windswept in a good way, not as in windswept in a wind tunnel.
No, in a good way, in a good way.
Okay.
You're looking great.
Oh, this time, maybe 3 weeks ago, I was on the Bay of Naples heading to Procida to have lunch in a beachside cafe. Yeah, it was actually wonderful to go back. I hadn't been there since 1984.
Did you like Pompeii? I love Pompeii.
I spent a week in a campsite down just below Pompeii, and it was as I recall, it was mostly agricultural land, orchards, and it's now freeways and
Really?
big box outlet stores, and yeah, it's different. They found so much more since I was there. There's so much to see. It's unbelievable. Yeah, it was an interesting trip. I went back to Berlin and caught up with someone I hadn't seen since 1984. And his friend who had introduced us, I last saw him in 1986 when he came to Australia. And the last time I spoke with him was the day after Chernobyl. He rang me from Germany freaking out that there was this cloud of radioactive dust in the air and he didn't know what he was going to do. And, you know, Berlin is heavy with the weight of 20th century history and before. There's a heaviness there.
I know. I was going to say, and is it a modern day heaviness now as well because of the geopolitical sort of landscape now, or is it historical?
For me, it was historical. I mean, I see Germany as leading the international charge to try to prevent countries from falling into fascism. I mean, people are looking around the world and saying, what the hell is going on? Didn't you listen to us at the Nuremberg trials? Didn't you watch what happened? But there's two of everything. There's two opera houses, there's two museums, because the city was once divided. I hung out there in West Berlin in 1984 with the people that I saw the other day. We used to go clubbing late at night in wild West Berlin nightclubs. I fainted in a nightclub one night. I remember that because I was too close to the ceiling and I think I just inhaled everyone's cigarette smoke.
How small was this place?
It was an underground cellar. We visited the Stasi Museum the other day, which was unnerving to watch what happens when a country institutionalizes eavesdropping. And they ended up resorting to psychological torture because no one knew who they could trust. They started out with physical torture and they ended up just with this incredible secrecy, with all the buildings having microphones embedded in walls. And, you know, there was an image of some guy who was at his best friend's wedding, and that man had been spying on that couple for years. And that's what it was like. So to watch what's going on right now in the United States, a place that I've loved for a long time, and I know that it's had a torturous history. It's never been a comfortable place, but it has by and large attempted to make peace with its history and grow and I don't know, just in the last few days, I'm trying to finish my book and I'm scrolling until midnight saying, what's going to happen next, you know?
And when you were traveling in Europe, were you staying on top of the news or have you come back and got a download?
No. But I was staying on top of it. Yeah. You know, and back in 1984, when I was traveling, I mean, I was 20. I was this white suburban kid from Perth, settler colonial, young adults, only just starting to understand my place in the world as someone who had migrated to Australia on their parents' White Australia policy benefits, you know. But I remember going to Dachau concentration camp in outside of Munich. I can still smell it to this day. And to read that, you know, Project 2025 or whatever they're calling themselves is setting up, what's it called? Alligator Alcatraz?
They already have set it up, Ian. They've already built one.
They've already got merch. They're treating it like a theme park, you know, and also they're destroying the Everglades. But it's like, are we doomed to repeat everything every 70 years? Like, is this the best we can do?
Well, I'm sure it's not the best we can do. I'm keen to know, you just went to Europe and it's a juxtapositioning in a way of kind of a part of the world that I think And to your point, part of the world that I think has memory is attempting to correct for past mistakes in a way, or history's catastrophes, really. And then we're watching US politics from Australia, and Australia, I think, is relatively, it feels relatively sane in comparison. We're watching US politics from Australia, which feels like quite a safe, sane haven in a way, because we've maintained our governance systems, and actually, even regardless of who you voted for in the last election, we almost resisted the assaults from people that perhaps were trying to turn that election into, a demonstration of what we've seen in the American political system, the personal attacks and, ideology. And so I think we came out of that unscathed and strong, right? Regardless of, who you voted for. Fair elections, people in Australia aren't sort of questioning that system. They're not questioning the democratic sort of, it feels like, you're right to say what is going on. It feels like there's this moment in time that we have to, and that's why we're here, we have to say something about it, because it just feels so unreal. And so I'm keen to know, because you've been to Europe, what were you hearing from people that you were talking to over there?
Yeah. I just wanted to reflect on Australia. I think we take our electoral system for granted, but we have the Australian Electoral Commission, which is considered to be one of the strongest, most robust, transparent systems in the world. We have compulsory voting, and we also have preferential voting, which actually creates a system that counters for the checks and balances. By and large, we've got rid of the gerrymanders that were rampant in the 70s. I mean, we vote on a Saturday when people can vote.
Exactly.
There's early voting to enable people that, for whatever reason, faith or other things, won't be available on a Saturday. They can vote beforehand. Do you know? I mean, we were in Europe and we went to Rome Pride, which was fantastic, to join this rambunctious, festive, loud, proud parade through this ancient city. Rome it's incredible. It's sort of an archaeological ruin and a modern city at the same time.
Exactly. I love Rome.
It's magnificent. I mean, to walk past the Colosseum, the reason I'm mentioning Pride is because it had a huge human rights focus. Their leader, Maloney, is basically instituting a whole range of homophobic, transphobic, misogynistic legislation against queer folk. And there was a huge presence for that. There was also a huge presence to acknowledge the human rights atrocities happening in Palestine. And I mean, I took comfort from the fact that queer folk are also forming alliances to acknowledge human rights issues facing other minorities. So that was my experience of Italy. So there's that weird...
It sounds like, it's a symmetry to the Pride marches in Hungary.
Yes, there was a sense that, Pride marches are in many ways a bellwether for democratic civic society in so many ways. There was a bit more of the corporate stuff going on in the Pride march. There were quite a few floats, but fortunately, I didn't see a giant inflatable bottle of sort of Absolute vodka going down the parade. And I mean, it's interesting to watch how the corporates have retreated from promoting or acknowledging Pride in the US the moment the screw turned. One of the things that's shocking me the most, I guess, watching the US is watching the corporate media cave to this fascist dictatorship and watching the corporates line up to turn a blind eye to ICE raiding their stores. Walmart has allowed ICE to come in. So all of these things, the lack of ID. I feel like sometimes I'm wearing a tinfoil hat because I'm thinking, well, all of those people that got pardoned in January 6th, you can't tell me they're not somehow involved in raiding places without wearing a badge or having their face covered. I mean, there is just so much going on. And I mean, I've probably watched The Sound of Music 10 times. Hasn't everyone? There's no excuses. We've seen what happens. Yeah. So I don't know. And I'm curious what's going to happen with LinkedIn. Is it going to just pretend none of this is going on?
You say that a lot, Ian. Let's go, because you said this to me before. You said, what's LinkedIn doing? And why do you think LinkedIn needs to do something?
Because it's the face of corporate capitalism in lots of ways. It's a social networking for professionals, many of whom humble brag about their latest appointment. But it is a place where civic discourse can happen. And I think it is an important setting for people that work in professional milieu and are trying to build up their business or network. We have to talk about what impact is this going to have on our professional lives. And I mean, all the scientists that are on there sharing information, all of the people that do all that work around ESG and corporate social responsibility, like how does CSR fit with dictatorship, you know? And I've tiptoed around it online, commented just in the last week about how the Fulbright board in the United States has resigned en masse because the Fulbright program is pretty much being killed off at the moment, which
Tell us a little bit about that, Ian, because you're a Fulbright scholar, and I did hear a little bit about Fulbright. Tell me a little bit about what's going on with Fulbright.
What I understand is the board that manages the program for the whole world, but especially the US, has resigned rather than allow their program to be dismembered and redirected towards a very narrow, hostile, racist agenda. The Fulbright program was established after the end of World War II by Senator William Fulbright, who used unexpended money that was designed to buy bombs and purchase military equipment. He managed to repurpose that to promote international understanding through soft power and having this exchange of US scholars visiting everywhere around the world and everywhere around the world visiting the US. He understood that education and learning and understanding how people live their lives in different settings is the only way really to bring about a strong international community. And when you go on.
Was there government interference around what the programs could focus on? Was that the main issue?
That's my understanding, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you know, can you imagine a government more hostile to people from around the world visiting the United States? I mean, even white Australians are being turned away at the airport in the United States now. So, yeah, the current US administration, if that's the right word for them, is completely hostile to the philosophy of Fulbright. So I don't know where that's going to go.
To education.
Learning.
Just the attacks on higher education they're beyond my wildest dreams in a way, because, you know, I worked in higher education at the start of my career, and we would often rail against any kind of government interference in higher education. And government was funding higher education solely back then. And we still work in partnership with government in higher education. But to think that government can be so audacious to say that, you know, that they're going to interfere at the minutiae of operations in a university about who they can hire and what courses they can teach, what books they can put on the curriculum. That's just unheard of. Well, no, we did hear about that in the 30s and 40s, right, in fascist states. So that to me is the brink of.
It's a tipping point.
It's the tipping point. That is the tipping point for me. Absolutely. Because there is a role of independence, of critical thinking that universities play. And I'm always skeptical when, you know, there's a lot of dialogue that tries to meet this in the middle somewhere, where you've got people saying, well, yes, you know, university curriculums have been biased towards more liberal content, which is actually bullshit, because what university curriculum is biased towards is critical thinking. It's actually always critical thinking. And so what that means is that you're always debating both sides of an argument. You're curious about both sides of an argument if you want to polarize an argument, because of course we know that arguments don't need to be polarized. There are multiple complex views when you discuss any kind. There's been, I guess, commentators and politicians who say, yes, you know, that to me is really ignorant of what actually goes on in university courses.
It's also a very... Yeah, go for it. It's also a very narrow, ignorant view of what adult learning is and how culture is reproduced and how civilization continues. I mean, it relies on oral history. It relies on intergenerational transfer of knowledge. And the reason Australian Indigenous Society, which was an international collaboration of about 300 Indigenous nations, the reason that worked for 60,000 years so well and is still surviving is because there's a strong oral history tradition where the elders pass on the lessons to the young ones and say, don't do this. If you do this, this will happen. And it's embedded in their myths and legends and songlines and stories and initiation ceremonies. And this current late capitalist era has filleted all that out. So our higher education institutions, I'm sorry, I'm ranting. The institutions where that occurred have become sushi trains where people pick up a little skill here and a little skill there, and it's all about being job ready.
Yeah.
But do you create a good society out of that when you don't understand?
Let me push back on you, because I
Please.
agree. I definitely, there are vocational trends in higher education that have moved curriculum away from certain contents and topic areas. But having been an academic, I know that even with a vocational purpose, you always have a higher purpose, and that is critical dialogue and including some of that tradition that you're talking about, understanding a topic. And there's nothing wrong with having an outcome that's vocational as well, while you're attempting to increase that critical thought or thought leadership in your students. Okay. So I don't think there's anything wrong with vocational education.
Please be right. Sounds great.
Yeah. Having said that, you know, when I was in universities, there were lots of departments of philosophy. And because they, you know, that was an area that, for example, didn't have a direct vocational outcome, they were then absorbed into other faculties. But they're still that way of thinking is still there. The tradition of a PhD is still part of the, you know, university curriculum. So I think university curriculums can be fit for purpose as well as being quite broad in content.
I'm heartened to hear you say that. I suppose part of my jaundiced views, I'm on Blue Sky actually, which I love. It's a wonderful platform, and I follow a lot of academic folk who are talking about how their courses are being cut, all the humanities are going.
Well, that is true. That is true. It is a reality. Yeah, it is.
Which I guess is where maybe some of that interchange can happen on LinkedIn, just to loop back to that area that we were talking about. Can a platform...
I think I feel a risk. There is a risk in boldly stating your opinion, in, you know, there is, because I think that we, particularly in a professional, you know, say professional corporate or even government space, there is a risk in maybe bucking the majority opinion or
speaking truth to power.
Speaking truth to power, because we don't provide spaces where people feel safe to do that. And so I think, you know, if we can do that, we can create spaces, but I don't know if LinkedIn is the right space, but particularly I think that we would be benefiting individuals as well as, you know, the collective organizational sort of population if we did have more spaces where we could dialogue and be open and curious to different points of view and, you know, get a little bit heated and rant a little bit without it breaking our careers, without it breaking our reputation. You know, I'm emotion in the workplace is there. We might as well use it, right? So, but I don't think that. Yeah, but in Australia in particular, I mean, I'm not going to talk globally, but in Australia, corporations and government workplaces are not creating, are not conducive to those kind of spaces. So I think that's what you're seeing. You're seeing this kind of almost
self-censoring
on LinkedIn, you know, and that's why even myself, I can like a comment but really what I want to do is, you know, there are things I want to shout about, but will I do that as a professional person?
Yeah. It's true, because I mean, right now the US Border Patrol, Customs or whatever are demanding to look at people's social media history on their phones. You have to give over your password. But I guess it's the same in Australia or anywhere. Like a potential employer might see what you've been posting online before they even interview you.
That's right.
So I guess you've got to be careful. And as much as I'm talking about storming the social media Bastille, I think you have a very important point to make, which is you don't want to sort of punch yourself in the face when you don't need to.
Yeah. And
But how?
But how do we speak up then? Is that your question?
No.
How do we speak up? You know, how
Yes.
do we do it?
Yes.
How do we
Yeah.
line in the sand?
Yes.
And I think, you know, I think before this Trump '02 regime, because I think it's really changed the risk around this. I think before this, corporations were leaning much more heavily into, you know, having an opinion or an identity, a set of values that they were happy to draw a line in the sand on. And that was
Yes.
coming from employees saying, we need to draw a line in the sand, you know, what do we stand for? And I'm seeing a retreat from
Oh,
that at 100 miles an hour. So that's concerning, right? It's concerning.
I mean, DEI, which is actually having a diverse workforce, is a strength. You're building in resilience. You're building in,
Absolutely.
you know, you're creating a company that looks like the wider society, and
Yeah.
then to retreat from that,
Yeah.
man.
I see a lot of people throwing out the baby with the bathwater, with, you know, and it's a reaction. It's a reaction to something that we're seeing, which I think is pretty scary. That's the other thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think it fills me with fear to watch
Mm-hmm.
US politics and
Mm-hmm.
to see to see the group compliance at the Senate
Mm-hmm.
fills me with dread.
And our Australian politicians are meekly seeking meetings with the Trump administration at the moment. And I just don't know whether that kind of soft power, is this like Richard Chamberlain going to the Eagle's Nest to meet with Hitler in the 1930s? I mean, I don't know.
Mm, mm. We don't know.
Watch this space. What can we do in the meantime? How do we wrap this up with a call to action for you and myself, as well as anyone else?
Well, I think
What do we do?
Well, I think that we've got to find places where we can speak truth to power. I think it's important. And for ourselves as individuals, I think it's important. And it doesn't have to, I disagree. I wouldn't be shouting on LinkedIn, but I would be definitely finding, there are groups on LinkedIn, by the way, where you can find like-minded people. I think talking to values, even in the workplace, you can have a dialogue where you say, look, this is my value, or I'm concerned about this. Who else is concerned about this? Or what are your concerns? Because there will be leaders who have staff members who are really concerned about what's going on. We know that it's impacting business. Business feels stagnant when you don't know what the future holds, and it's very difficult to be buoyant in your dreaming about the future and your strategizing when you don't know. So I think we need to create spaces. It's okay to choose your space. And it's because as an individual, I want to be able to say, I said something at that time.
Yeah.
We have to be, that's about being authentic to me. You know, I have an opinion, and it doesn't mean that I know everything about that particular situation. So for example, the atrocities in Gaza right now, absolutely there's complexity in what's going on. But I think we can all agree that is, from a human population, human rights perspective, that is not the world we would be expecting to live in 2025. That is not what I signed up for, right? Not what my parents signed up for. Nobody wants that. So we can all agree on those basic human rights values and talk from there without being otherized, because these are polarities. There's an and in between. It doesn't have to be an either or. I don't have to hate Israel because I support Gaza.
I want to keep changing the world, but I have to go and get my hair cut.
I understand. We need to control what we. This is the other thing. Control the things. We can be concerned about a lot of things, but we can act on things we control. So yes, I think your hair looks great, but if you need a haircut.
Yeah, it's time. I have an appointment I have to get to. Can we continue this conversation next time we meet? Because I think it's a really important one.
Let's keep doing that.
It's the conversation,
my dear.
Yeah. You and I have been preparing for this moment, it would seem, our entire professional lives. Yeah. Peace and power to you, my friend.
Thank you. All right, we'll see you soon.
Bye.